You're looking live at Twin Ring Motegi in Motegi, Japan, and the best view we can show you is a vacant turn 4. That's right, nobody working on the weepers that postponed this race for 24 hours. This was the work just one day ago. They actually brought in a special machine that sucked out 10,000 gallons of water. No, it wasn't that little one right there. The water just kept seeping up through the track all day yesterday. They finally had to postpone the race for 24 hours, as now we will finally get to run here in Motegi, Japan. It is the third stop of the 2008 season. It is the Firestone Indy 300 from Twin Ring Motegi. And down on the starting grid, we have 18 cars vying for the win. And we'll get you caught up on everything with Firestone Race Day as we welcome you. And we're going to be starting this race very quickly. In fact, we're going to get the show on the road right now as we send it down trackside.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine.
The engines come to life, and you can see some of the onboard camera shots that we have. We'll give you all of those in just a matter of minutes. Hello again, everybody. I'm Marty Reed, along with Scott Goodyear. We're in Long Beach, getting ready for tomorrow's Grand Prix. And, of course, Jack Arute is over in Motegi, Japan. We'll hear from him momentarily. Obviously, this is the first of a historic two-part weekend. The IndyCar Series running here in Motegi, Japan, and then tomorrow, on the streets of Long Beach, the Champ Car finale, with points being awarded in both races to those that are competing for the season-long IndyCar Championship after unification happened back in March. Let's take a look at the points right now coming into this race. And you see that Elio Castroneves has a 10-point margin over Scott Dixon. Tony Kanaan is 13 back, and then there is a three-way tie for fourth, including Graham Rahal, our winner just 2 weeks ago in the streets of St. Petersburg. He, along with E.J. Viso, Oriol Servia, and 6 others, will be racing tomorrow in the streets of Long Beach, and where they can pick up a lot of ground in the points championship. All right, let's show you where we are in Long Beach, as that's the streets that we'll be in. There's the proximity to Los Angeles, and this is the trip that Jack Arute's going to make tonight. And boy, the trek is going to be long and arduous for him, because there he comes into Tokyo, and then 65 miles to the north you'll find Twin Ring Motegi. And as you see, the cars are coming out, and let's bring in Scott Goodyear, our expert analyst on Indy cars, and let's talk a little bit about this track.
Well, very common that we run on 1.5-mile tracks, but this one is a little different than the usual ones that we have in the States. It's actually only 10 degrees of banking. It is shaped like a paperclip, really, or some people say like an egg. Turns 1 and 2 are very wide open, very fast, flat out, and 3 and 4 very tight. Drivers will downshift 2 gears going down into turns 3 and 4. And we've had a lot of rain here, so this track's going to be a little different to what the drivers had when they were on there just a couple of days ago. So when the green flag drops, a lot of unknowns for the drivers here today.
And there's the track itself, and there is the Honda FCX Clarity, as it is the special pace car, and this car is hydrogen powered. In fact, it is one of only 2 in the entire world. It's scheduled for release in the U.S. this summer, and then Japan this fall, and that is going to be interesting to see how it is received. And
great looking car.
Biggest thing will be, where do you find the hydrogen? But that's something we'll cross a little bit later. All right, as we come back to the action at hand tonight, as you continue to see the cars, we'll have a total of 4 pace laps. Here's our Firestone starting grid across the top. Now, Elio Castroneves gets the pole as a result of qualifying being washed out, so he isn't officially credited with winning the pole. Although, if you remember back in 2006, that's exactly what he did there and went on to win the race.
Well, and he did a great job. And he was 4th quickest actually on Thursday's practice before it started to get rained out. Friday we knew it was rained out. Didn't do anything on Saturday, which was the original race day. But great for him. He did have some suspension problems, which cost him practice time on Thursday, but still ended up 4th quickest. But I think everybody's going to end up probably chasing Tony Kanaan here today, because he was quickest in practice, and the car seems to be burning very strong for him.
And of course, one of the guys we're going to keep an eye on is last year's winner, Tony Kanaan, as he is going to be starting in third position, as he's third in the points, and there he is, as he's going to be one of the guys to watch here early in the go. And as we get a chance, let's bring in Jack Arute, who's over trackside in Motegi.
Hey guys, let me give you another AGR teammate that bears watching here. Do you remember Danica Patrick's rookie season in the IndyCar competition in 2005? Right here at this racetrack, she made a believer of all of us because she led and looked to be on her way to her first victory in just a handful of races. I talked to Danica yesterday and she told me she likes her race car, but she really wants to get the victory so people will stop asking her when she will get it. Also, if you're looking for a dark horse team to pull forward to this weekend, Team Vision Racing with AJ Foyt and Ed Carpenter. Why? Well, I talked to Larry Curry, and remember, they ran so very well, not only in qualifying, but also in the race at Homestead. He told me that if they leave Motegi without a podium finish, their trip, and I quote, will be a failure here in Japan. You were talking about the 10,000 gallons of water that was removed from the weepers. Here's how they did that. All night, they had a crew working there. They drilled 4-inch holes. They sucked all of that water out. Then they resealed those holes this morning. I personally went up and inspected them in the same area if you were with us yesterday that we looked at. It's high and dry. We're going racing, fellas.
All right, we're seeing a little smoke from Tony Kanaan. What do you make of it?
I think a lot of the drivers are trying to get some heat into the tires right now with only 59 degrees ambient temperature. That's going to be crucial to take this start.
And what should we watch for in tonight's race?
Well, weather, we've talked about the rain. Track conditions will be changing. We'll talk about that throughout the race. Car consistency. It talked about different ends of the racetrack are very different as far as the car setup is concerned. And race strategy, we're going to talk about that as the race continues also.
And as they come out of turn number 4, we're getting ready to go green. The pace car pulls in. They come out of 4 down the front straightaway, and we are green at Motegi. Oh, and again, just like last year, we have a car spinning into the wall, and it is Marco Andretti. So the cold tires that got Koski Matsuura last year bites Marco Andretti, and he is out of his second straight race.
A long ways to go to try and take the green flag and have this happen. And the worst thing about it is, Marty, 13, 14 hours of flight time coming home to think about what you did wrong or what happened going into the turn. Now, we'll try and get a replay and understand exactly what happened with this. And he's staying in the car hoping that maybe he might get this fixed and get a few laps and get going. And here you see the frustration of him taking the padding out now from around him and hits the steering wheel. And now he decides to climb out. And it could have been cold tires. We're going to replay and have a look at this. Remember, we started to say about the ambient temperature is only 59 degrees, and these tires and the cars are really built for something in the mid-70s, something along that. And we did see the drivers starting to smoke their tires up just on the pace laps as we start to watch the replay here. And you can see Marco Andretti is already at the top of your screen. The back end starting to go around on him means the car is loose. He was by himself, does not look like he was touched. And the cars in front were quite a ways away from him, so we can't really put that down to some disturbed air. Now we can see that the car just starts to come around on him. The front hits the wall, and there definitely is too much damage there for that car to continue just on its own without some repair.
On board with Danica, and there you see Marco twitches. Boy, this is so similar to what happened to Koski Matsuura last year.
Well, Marty, the guys have not been on the track for the last couple of days. Any rubber that was on the track has been washed away because of the rain, and because of that situation, they really don't know what the car setup is going to be, and we talked about that taking the green flag here.
Let's send it to Jack Arute.
Guys, I'm here with Ziggy Hargis, who's Marco Andretti's crew chief. And Ziggy, you had a chance to talk on the radio to Marco. What did he tell you happened?
Yeah, we actually didn't explain what happened. He just said how sorry he was that, I mean, it's cold out there and it's a mistake and we paid for it. So it's a bad deal because we had a good car. You know, shit, it's just not good right now.
Let's talk a little bit about race setup. When I talked to you guys yesterday, you said with the cold weather and the green racetrack, you were going to try and put a little bit more downforce in the car. Did you start the race with more downforce?
Yeah, we a little bit. We tried to stay, you know, with the car that we had. It was cold the other day when we were running here, so you know, we had a good car. He was quite happy with the car's balance, and it was definitely solid right through the first day we had practice here. So we did go a little bit more for the race, but you know, it's just one of those things. He's trying to hold his position out there. It is cold, and cold tyres must have got us there. So bad deal because he had a good little run, and he's bloody quick. So hopefully it'll come around.
Guys, for information, I asked Kim Green to give us an assessment of who he thought the fastest car was in the AGR stable here. Without hesitation, he said Marco Andretti. Short day.
Very short, and what a promising start to the season. If you remember back at Homestead, he finished second after starting fourth there, but then broke the half shaft, finishing 25th 2 weeks ago at St. Petersburg, and now crashing here in lap 1, which will give him an 18th place finish out of 18 cars. Pits are open. We're going to see if there's any takers. I can imagine the only ones that would take is if they notice something about the car that they don't like.
Well, and it's just going to come down to strategy things. One of the things we talked about what to watch for, but obviously we don't have too many laps underneath right now to turn around and even think about coming in. But, you know, this brings up an issue sometimes. We talk about tire warmers, and we don't use them right now currently this year in the IRL. We have used them previously for some testing, and you've used them for doing some qualifying, but I'm in favor of them, especially when you go to situations like this when the ambient is just too cold and you don't get that much time to really warm the tires up. Maybe something we think about in the future.
Well, the ambient temperature is 59 degrees, the track temperature 66 degrees, and one car is coming in. It looks like it might be Ryan Briscoe. We'll double check on that from Motegi. Remember, he started 15th based on points. We're coming right back. At Twin Ring, Motegi on the backstretch getting ready to go green. We can tell you it was Ryan Briscoe that did pit, as did Townsend Bell and Roger Yasukawa. So they were at the 3 cars at the back of the field. They've got 4 laps in hand on fuel. They're still at the back of the field, 15th, 16th, and 17th. Helio Castroneves leads them down the front stretch. And here we go, back to green flag racing on lap 7. See the sparks. There's a couple of bumps through turn 1 and 2 on full tanks. You'll see that throughout the race. Behind Castroneves, it's Dixon right there in the 9 car. Tony Kanaan on the high side in the 7-11. You're on board with Tony. Taking a look on the inside, here comes Dan Wheldon going underneath. Remember, Wheldon dominated this race last year, and he's won here twice. Meanwhile, Tony Kanaan's falling back towards his teammate. Now remember, we talked a little earlier when we were on the pace laps and we saw him smoking right there. You thought he was like warming up brakes, Jack, so let's find out what's going on.
Well, Marty, it was indeed the brakes getting fitted in, but what's interesting is you saw that the Target Chip Ganassi cars have dispatched Tony Kanaan. They were very smart. They saw the smoke as well, and they warned Dan Weldon that TK might have a slight brake issue. I checked with his people, and he told us that it was okay that the brakes had seated. Meanwhile, Marco Andretti has now come out of the infield care center after a quick checkup. We'll see if we can get a quick word with him here. Marco, shades of Coach K. Matsura 1 year ago. What happened to you in the car?
It's embarrassing. That's cold tires is when you're supposed to take advantage of the other guys, you know, and it just caught me out. I mean, it just snapped loose, the cold temperatures, but you can't blame it on that. It was a driver error for sure, and again, can't be more disappointed for the Alpine boys. Sorry.
Thanks, Mark.
Marco Andretti, the
Fellas.
second. Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead. All right, we'll come back to Jack a little bit later. Now down the backstretch, Helio Castroneves leading now the 4th race here at Motegi in the 6 that have been held where he has led in the event.
He seems to have a pretty happy race car underneath him right now. He doesn't seem to have to use up too much road. He seems like he's able to turn into the car, keep the speed up mid-turn, which is what you always watch for. That tells you if the car is working well for you or not. Remember, turns 1 and 2 are flat out where we just went through now, and as we ride on board, coming down to turns 3 and 4, 2 quick downshifts. Let's have a listen. 6 down to 4th, and usually back up to the 5th and 6th gear.
And we go back to the battle for 10th right now because that's the closest action we have on the track. You're on board with Hideki Muto. Muto just got passed by Darren Manning, and here he comes back underneath. This is for 10th place. Remember, this is Muto's like Indy 500. He is Japanese native, and the fans have been flocking to him all week long.
And he was smart because he tucked right in behind Darren Manning. Once he got past, took advantage of the draft and just dove back down on the inside. A very smart move for the rookie.
Working lap 15 of 200. Nothing has changed up front. There you see Ryan Briscoe. He is going around Jay Howard. So Briscoe will take over 13th position. You're saying, well, why is the 6 car all the way back there? Remember, he was back in 15th position because of points at the start. And then he also took the extra load of fuel. Let's get more from Jack.
And fellas, that extra load of fuel could be critical for the cars like Ryan Briscoe. Now remember, Ryan Briscoe was quick in the single practice, but because this race started on points, he was relegated to the rear of the field, running a very similar setup to your leader, Helio Castroneves, as part of the Team Penske juggernaut. It was another move by Penske to try and take his team off of schedule, at least one car. We've seen him do it so many times, and in the past, the man that comes in with the best fuel consumption strategy is the one that goes to victory lane. Remember that you can make, on an average, 3 miles to a gallon under green, and you triple that under yellow. So now he's got some valuable fuel.
Well, and Briscoe, as he's looking underneath Townsend Bell, Bell also got some ground gained. He was moved up to 12th there after restarting 16th, but now he has been punched back to 13th as Briscoe gets around him. Now remember, for the beginning of the season, it has not been too kind to Ryan Briscoe. One accident was not his fault. If you remember back at the beginning of the season, that's Milka Duno, and Milka collects the 6 car and puts Briscoe out of the race. But 2 weeks ago at St. Petersburg, this was his fault.
Just caught the inside wall with the right corner of the car, and it just threw him to the outside of the track here at St. Petersburg on a narrow street circuit like we'll be racing tomorrow in Long Beach. There's no room for error.
The biggest thing that Ryan Briscoe needs to do is finish this race. He is the only driver to crash out of the first 2, and as we said, the first one not his fault. Coming up now on the 15 car of Buddy Rice, and Buddy, a proud new papa. If you were with us last night, you know it was April 9th that their daughter Mina was born to wife Michelle, and we wish them well. You're on board with Buddy right now.
They're battling right now for position between Rice, and this is a situation for Ryan Briscoe as we now see the 3 car, the leading car of Penske's machine with Helio Castroneves. And Briscoe, when I spoke to him before, he said, you know something, I just need to get points. As you mentioned, Marty, there's a lot of pressure on a new driver when he comes to a team, and especially when you arrive at a team like Team Penske, to do well. He doesn't hire drivers that don't finish racers. He doesn't hire drivers that don't finish well, and you can rest assured that that is something that's been on Ryan Briscoe's mind over the first 2 races running for the Penske IndyCar team.
His teammate right now, Helio Castroneves, has over a half a second lead over Scott Dixon. Dan Weldon is 3rd. Tony Kanaan 4th. Danica Patrick rounds out your top 5 here in Japan. ESPN's presentation of the Firestone IndyCar 300 at Japan, brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing, and by ethanol, fueling America's future. Blossoms on the trees as spring has sprung even in Japan, and there you see the race leader and 2nd and 3rd. It's Helio Castroneves in front of the 2 Target Ganassi racing machines of Scott Dixon, our winner back at Homestead, and of course Dan Weldon, a 2-time winner here at Twin Ring Motegi, as we're working lap 28 of 200. Let's get a little more on the Ganassi teammates from Jackaroo.
Fellas, you remember I said at the start of the race the concern was for the green racetrack, and basically AGR decided to twist a little additional downforce into their cars. When I checked with Target Chip Ganassi and I reconfirmed with them, They elected to go with the same setup that they practiced with on Thursday. What that means is there is not as much downforce on those two cars. According to Mark Hull, he said the problem is when you add too much downforce here, it creates so much drag that you slow down. So right now, the two cars that are hunting down Helio Castroneves have just a tad less downforce than most of the other cars out on the racetrack.
And Jack, that's some great information, because the other thing that happens when you add downforce to the race car, and it gives it drag and slows it down, but it also end up using more fuel. As we're watching both the Target Chip Ganassi cars, it looks like they're able to run up on the back of Helio Castroneves, but maybe just can't get close enough to take a run at him. But as the track changes here, and we talked about the weather and how the track will change once the rubber starts to get put down and the car starts to get some more grip because the track is rubbering in, maybe that's an opportunity for the Target Chip Ganassi cars, or any cars that don't have as much downforce as maybe they would like right now, will work better for them as the track becomes better for the grip level.
And as you take a look at third place, Dan Wheldon, we mentioned the fact that he has won twice here at Twin Ring Motegi. Do you know that 04 race, well, he led 192 of the 200 laps. It was a dominating performance, and of course that was when he was racing with Andretti Green Racing, and then comes right back in 05 and does it again. And if you remember last year, he led about, I think it was 126 laps and ended up losing the race to Tony Kanaan.
And that was on fuel strategy. One of the other things we mentioned on what to watch for, because Tony was able just to get a few more laps out of his car on a tank full of fuel, and was able to stay out just a little longer and came in for that splash and go at the end of the race and got back out on the racetrack ahead of Dan. And although Dan looked like he had a faster car, he ended up second in the event.
Dropping back, you see in fourth place right there going through your screen was Tony Kanaan. There's Danica Patrick, and then the yellow car, that was Ed Carpenter. And then as we gobble back a little further, in seventh place, it's AJ Foyt the fourth. And there is the 17 of Ryan Hunter-Reay going around the lap traffic of Roger Yasukawa. Ryan Hunter-Reay is now up to 8th position, starting 10th. So Ryan, who had moved up 3 positions, has lost one of those as AJ Foyt the fourth got back around him to push him back to 8th. The highest he has been in this race is 7th. You got to remember, this is his first time ever here at Twin Ring.
You know, in his situation, he had a reasonable race car. He set at Homestead and worked himself up through the field, and this is exactly what he said he thought he would do here. Felt the car was good and just would continue to work on it during the race, as all these drivers will here today. There again, because the track condition is changing, they'll be radioing back to their pits and telling them what the car is doing as the run continues, getting ready to make some changes either with the wings or tire pressures in the first pit stop. And the winner of the race here today, Marty, will be the guy that works well with his team, making changes to the race car, chasing the track conditions, and making it fast for those last 10 or 15 laps.
And as we work lap 35 of 200, remember that you know, these cars can go roughly about 50 laps. We saw Tony Kanaan go about 4 to 5 laps longer than everybody else. And there is the man who last year did such a great job with a fuel economy run. Could he be doing it again? Let's check in with Jack Arute.
Guys, it looks like Tony Kanaan may try to do the exact same thing and repeat and go farther than anybody else. Just a couple of moments ago, his crew radioed to him to start thinking about fuel and fuel conservation. So they are in the situation for there. Meanwhile, directly behind Tony Kanaan, Danica Patrick now running in the 5th position. Of all the AGR cars, we've got one out, and the report from Danica in the cockpit is the car has got a bit of understeer. That means it wants to push out to the wall. They'll try and correct that, as Scott alluded to during the first pit stop, by making an air pressure adjustment and possibly a front wing adjustment. Because of that caution that was brought out in the early going, the pit window has now moved up. Most of the front runners, with the exceptions of the ones that pitted under that first caution, can go as far as lap 55.
All right, thanks, Jack. And notice that yellow car, the number 20 of Ed Carpenter. He is slowly closing the gap on Danica Patrick, as he came off that 5th place finish run at our opening race at Homestead Miami Speedway, and is right now running in the 6th position, just a half a second behind Danica Patrick. Meanwhile, the race leader continues to be Helio Castroneves. Our pole sitters out in front. Don't forget Sunday, NASCAR's on ESPN. Sprint Cup Series is on an off weekend, and NASCAR's top guns look to tame the 2.5-mile road course in Mexico City. The NASCAR Nationwide Series in Mexico City presented by Kawasaki on ESPN. Sunday afternoon coverage begins. NASCAR Countdown at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Right here at Twin Ring Motegi, it is Helio Castroneves by just over a half a second, but that gap appears to be closing just a little as you see his margin back to the two Ganassi teammates of Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon. And of course for Helio, he is a former winner here at Twin Ring Motegi. In fact, a very similar situation if you go back to 2006. He obtained the pole through a rainout and owner's points, went on to win the race, and of course climbed the fence. And if you listen to him talk about the fence here, he says that the holes are very tiny and it's hard to get a good grip, but he still managed to get up there.
I'm sure he'd like to do it today, but there's a lot of racing left here right now. And when you look in your mirror going around the racetrack and the car behind you can run high and can run low, like the target cars are able to do right now. He sees Dixon first and then Weldon. And as you start to come up to traffic, you're going to have to make sure that you choose right. Otherwise, the drivers in back will take advantage.
That's Marty Roth in the black 25. He's about to go 2 laps down. And Helio makes quick work of him. And here comes Dixon and Weldon on the high side. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
Fellas, let's update you on what's going to happen in just a handful of laps for your leader, Helio Castroneves. He just radioed to Tim Cindric that the car is, and I quote, a tiny bit loose. So when the Team Penske machine comes onto pit road, look for the left front tire changer to take 1/2 turn of wing out of the left front wing. That's what you do, Scott Goodyear, when you're just a tiny bit loose.
Well, only a half a turn. That means the car must be very close to being perfect as we see the 20 car of Ed Carpenter starting to come in, and that's probably just a little bit early, Marty.
I'm going to be interesting to see what happens here as far as if this was a planned stop for Ed Carpenter as all of a sudden he is into pit lane. Jack?
Guys, it was indeed a planned stop, but it was a conservatively planned stop. The idea being to get out of sequence just a little bit. I had talked to Larry Curry about that fact. He said if we're one of the first cars to pit, we can rotate our way through and possibly gain a couple of spots. Keep in mind, the conventional wisdom is this will take about 3.5 stops. Meanwhile, Danica Patrick has pulled onto pit road, and they are going to go to work there. No major changes except for tire pressure to try and adjust that push condition. Helio Castroneves is set as well, and a caution comes out. There's a car in the wall.
So the pits are now closed, so anybody coming down, unless they are low on fuel, will have to do a pass through, and the caution out for the second time. So we are told that Tony Kanaan and AJ Foyt IV will have to do the pass-through, and that is going to hurt them on this sequence. And there is the reason. It is Hideki Muto that gets refired and back out here on lap 49. I was a little surprised to see how early, and you see the damage on the left front wing on Muto's car. I was a little surprised that they weren't able to go to lap 49 or 50 before we started seeing pit stops.
Well, especially when we had a couple of laps under caution at the very beginning, but the conservativeness of bringing Ed Carpenter in, maybe you get a chance to check your fuel mileage, make sure everything is what you think it is. Remember, not a whole lot of running as we see the 10 car, the Target Chip Ganassi car of Dan Weldon doing some stopping here already. But, you know, you don't want to run out of fuel, that's for sure.
Jack, what was the story on the 10 car?
Running out of fuel, needed a splash and go. Meantime, Scott Dixon finds himself in a similar position as teammate. The reason he didn't pit along with Dan Weldon, he missed the pit in.
Well, that may end up being a blessing in disguise.
Well, with splash and go, let's explain this for a second. By IRL rules, that if you are running out of fuel or if you have a flat with one of your tires, even though the pit lane is closed, you are able to come into the pit lane and take on fuel so you don't run out of fuel on the track, or you're able to come in and change the tire and make sure that you can get back on the racetrack. But you still have to come back in and do a complete stop.
And Scott Dixon is now in. Let's send it to Jack Arute. And he's only getting a splash, Jack.
The precious fuel that's got Dixon needed has gone into that 22-gallon tank, and he'll be able to go out until the pits are open. Elio Castroneves was supposed to come in, guys, right about now. Your leader's going to have to be concerned a little bit about fuel as well very shortly.
And now we see the other reason that we had the contact. It wasn't just Hideki Muto. It looks like he and Marty Roth may have gotten together. And we haven't seen a replay on this from our host broadcasters over in Japan. We'll see if we can dial that one up. Here we go.
Well, this is actually some action that's going on during...
Wow.
Oh, there you go. That is actually after they come in through the stop and they're about ready to leave. And then you pass the timeline, which they did. And you know what ends up happening is that when you have your foot on the gas as a rookie, sometimes you got your foot too far down on the gas and trying to make sure you get a good jump as soon as your speed limiter control comes off, which is right now. And when you do that, the speed limiter control comes off, your foot's almost all the way down as we watch Elio Castroneves do a great pit stop. And they switch, almost like turning a light switch on, Marty, is that you get 650 horsepower at the rear wheels and you spin the tires. And that's exactly what happened with Muto.
Well, as you can see, the pits are now open and everybody came in. Elio Castroneves. Jack, give us an update on what transpired.
Well, the major change that was made, we had talked about just before the caution came down. Tim Cindric and the Elio Castroneves crew decided to take a half turn of wing out of the left front. Elio likes his car very nicely, but again, as we said, when you start to fine-tune things. But what is interesting, again, you've got to keep a lot of close attention to the number of laps that are run under caution here today. We are at lap 50. And if you can get enough caution laps here, because you can build so much fuel. Remember the cars that pitted early? Well, Ryan Briscoe is one of the cars that decided to take advantage of this caution. He's back in sequence with everyone else.
Yes, and you saw Dan Weldon was listed as the leader momentarily, but he came back into the pits. It is Castroneves, and Ryan Briscoe is the big winner in this deal. Remember, he started 15th. He has now moved up to second position. Dixon is third, Weldon is fourth, Tony Kanaan is fifth. How will all this play out? We're just a quarter of the way through at the Firestone INDYCAR 300. And at Twin Ring Motegi, Hideki Muto made another stop, and it looked like that may have been for a penalty. We'll have to check with race officials to see if he was penalized. We're under our second caution, and we're told it was not for a penalty, so they wanted to top him off on fuel. We couldn't see that, though. We only saw the guys at the front of the car holding him there. Let's reset this for you. We're working lap 54. Our second caution came out, two separate incidents. You saw what happened to Hideki Muto. We thought there might have been some contact with Marty Roth in the 25 car. Marty just slid up coming out of turn 4, bent the right front suspension. He's out of the race. Muto has a new nose, a new wing, and is back in the show. It's time now for our GoDaddy.com trivia question for today's event. Which driver new to the IndyCar series in 08 has won at Japan? And the clock is running, everybody. I should feel like Alex Trebek or one of these guys. Okay, let's bring in the answer. And it will be a man that you'll see racing tomorrow, Bruno Junqueira. And he did it when Champ Car was running here back in 2002. And of course, we'll be here. And Jack's going to make the trip all the way back. And it's going to be very close, nip and tuck for Jack to make it in time for the race here. But he's got a helicopter ride from there to Narita Airport. And then we got another helicopter set for him as soon as he lands at LAX to get him down here. And good luck, Jack. We hope you make it.
Talking about Bruno Junqueira, that was the only driver that actually won here for Target Chip Ganassi back in all the years that they've done here. They've been on the pole many times. Matter of fact, with Jimmy Vasser and also Juan Pablo Montoya in '98 and 2000. But just one win for the Target Chip Ganassi team here, which is incredible when you think about how successful they have been.
I remember that strategy early in the race. I mean, that second pit stop when Ryan Briscoe came in, they picked up a ton of spaces. They started 15th. They're now listed second behind Elio Castroneves. The teammates run 2, and then it's Dixon and Weldon and Kanaan, your top 5. Jack Arute?
Yeah, guys, keep in mind, because Briscoe had not run as long, he didn't take as much time to have to fill the tank. And there are some reports, we're trying to get it from Roger Penske, he may have short pitted as well, not taking a full tank of fuel. We're back to green.
Here on lap number 57 of 200, and look at the action going on underneath. That is Dixon with lap traffic in front of him there, with the 15 of Buddy Rice, who is a lap down, and on the high side, that is Briscoe, and they're going to split him. Something's got to give.
Now you saw Buddy Rice coming out of the turn, started to go down towards the low side, then started to right his car right in the middle of the road. Remember, the spotters are up top here and would tell him that 2 cars are behind. One's coming high, one's coming low, and that really just helped out and stopping possible wheel touching.
So it is Castroneves, Dixon, Briscoe, Weldon, and Kanaan, your top 5. Townsend Bell has moved up to 6th after a very good pit stop, and Darren Manning has moved to 7th. Danica Patrick is now 8th. You see the rest of the field coming across the top of the screen. Let's get more on Townsend Bell from Jack Arute.
Bell, as a lot of the front runners have been making minor tweaks, minor adjustments. Not so for Townsend Bell. He likes his car. There have been no changes made as he continues to make a run to the front.
And Darren Manning is right underneath him right now, and that is a battle for position. That is for 6th, and right behind there's Danica Patrick. And there goes Manning shooting ahead of him. Bell says discretion the better part of valor.
Darren Manning's done a great job. They've made a lot of changes over the wintertime with that team, and right now he seems to have a lot of confidence. He's worked out a fair amount in the wintertime. He's become stronger. That was one of the downfalls that a lot of people thought last season, when he started to be able to lose the energy to drive the car, especially on road courses. But he's fit and he's focused, and expect great things out of Darren Manning this year.
You saw the 3 biggest movers in the field, and of course that is Ryan Briscoe leading that charge, as he has picked up 12 spots, as here we are working lap 62 now of 200 at Twin Ring Motegi. While all this is going on a little bit further back in the field up front, Castroneves leads Scott Dixon by 1.2 seconds. Ryan Briscoe is now 3rd. There he is, 2 seconds back. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
Marty, remember I told you we were concerned that maybe Ryan Briscoe had short-filled the 22-gallon tank with ethanol. I just checked with Roger Penske. That is not the case. They got a full fill. Now, what does that mean to the guy that he's trying to chase down, Scott Dixon? Remember, Scott Dixon had to pit late because he missed his pit in, and to try and assuage a very hot Scott Dixon, his crew told him, said, we don't think that Briscoe took a full tank. Sometimes you have to bend the truth a little bit in order to keep your driver cool in the cockpit.
All right, thanks for the update, Jack. And Elio Castroneves officially has led every single lap when they get to the stripe. So he has led all 63 of the 200 so far, and right now he is 1.1 seconds ahead of 2nd place Scott Dixon after 62 of 200. And Elio Castroneves, could he win again? Stay with us and find out. Take a look at Twin Ring Motegi, and let's talk about what is coming up on the motorsports calendar on ESPN and ABC. The American Le Mans Series at Long Beach, 12:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC on Sunday. Then NASCAR Nationwide Series action, Mexico City. That's Sunday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. And then the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. And that's going to be a good race, especially after the way qualifying went. And as we take a look at lap 68 of 200, and there is Elio Castroneves still leading. And there is Ryan Briscoe, his teammate, and Dan Weldon has just gotten around Briscoe. So move Briscoe back to 4th, move Weldon up to 3rd. And we had a chance to talk to Ryan about what it's like racing in front of the Japanese fans.
Probably the thing that stands out most to the Japanese fans. I mean, they're just amazing. They're so enthused and they're so into it, and you can't walk from the garage to the hospitality without just getting mobbed by you know, the fans in the paddock. And it's a great feeling, you know, to see their excitement, to have them welcoming us to their country so warmly. It's great.
And it seems like everybody has cameras, they all have pens, and they all want autographs, and the guys say it really is an experience being over there. And We're, of course, as we mentioned before, here in Long Beach getting ready for the race tomorrow, which you'll see on ESPN2. And some of these guys are going to be trying to make the trip as well. Elio Castroneves, Briscoe's teammate, may try and make the trip back all the way from Japan to make it to tomorrow's race. There's Tony Kanaan right behind Briscoe. He is closing now. That is 4th and 5th place on your screen. Jack Arute, you've got more on the 11 car?
Yeah, Marty, I do. Remember I talked about last year how good he was at making fuel. Well, that's the strategy that they're engaged in right now. When I asked his crew, how much fuel can you make? Well, they just smiled.
Well, and what was interesting was that first round of pit stops really got skewed because of the yellow coming out right when everybody needed to stop. So we still don't know who really can go the longest in this race. And like last year, I mean, we knew that after the first round of pit stops, it was Tony Kanaan.
Tony right now starting to get a draft on Ryan Briscoe and slides down the inside. Nice timing of that move. But Tony Kanaan has always been good for getting better fuel mileage than a lot of drivers, and that can happen many different ways. Obviously, you have the adjustability from the driver's aid inside the cockpit, a knob on the steering wheel that you have 3 different selections for leanness of the engine. Well, you get a little less fuel to the motor, a little less horsepower. Sometimes the engine runs just a little bit hotter. Not a concern today, obviously, with a 59 or 60 degree ambient temperature. But you also, it's how you put your foot on the throttle and how you downshift and how you apply your foot back on the throttle, as we hear Tony right now. Smooth and easy. Don't really be rough up and down on the gas pedal like a light switch. And those are the drivers, including guys like Scott Dixon, who are just very good at making fuel mileage.
Well, for Kanaan, it's his 11th start here at Twin Ring Motegi. 5 of those were with CART. Of course, he won last year, and he only led 26 laps. He's had 3 other finishes in the top 5, so he definitely likes this track, and he's done extremely well here at Twin Ring. Working lap number 76 of 200, and as you're on board with Tony Kanaan, right behind him is Ryan Briscoe, and another guy we got to give a little shout out to is right behind Briscoe. Take a look at the 14 car of Darren Manning. We talked about him a little bit, but Jack Arute, you've got more?
Yeah, I just checked with Larry Foyt and with AJ Foyt about the run of the ABC Supply car. They said they've made no changes on it. They actually like the way the car is running. For Darren Manning, this is a homecoming of sorts. You see, he spent 2 entire seasons here in Japan running in the Japanese Formula 3 Championship. He won that championship on his way up the ladder to IndyCar stardom. One of the traditions here, though, is at the end of the race, Darren Manning brings all of his buddies down to Tokyo, and they have a big party. He is an idol here. Next to the Japanese drivers, the driver that is most sought after is Darren Manning.
Well, right now, Manning, as we said, running in 6th. He's about 8 seconds behind our race leader, Elio Castroneves. And as we head to commercial break, we'll give you some sights and sounds of Japanese culture in the Motegi era. At Twin Ring Motegi, the battle for the lead is getting a little closer now. Take a look at the 9 car of Scott Dixon, our winner at Homestead, Miami. He's closing down on Elio Castroneves. Our Firestone lap leader has led all 81 laps so far today. It's been a dominant performance for Elio, but here comes Dixon. Looks like he may have something for him.
And that last time through, I'm sure I saw Dixon's car take a wiggle coming off of turn 3 going into 4 up towards the wall. Now he seems to distance himself just a little bit further from Elio's car up in front. Remember, we talked about this consistency at both ends of the racetrack. Turns 1 and 2, where you see the cars going through now, is wide open, flat on the gas, 205, 208 miles an hour. As you get down the backstretch here, as they're traveling along here, still over 200 miles an hour, but this is the turn where you're down 2 gears, 6 down to 5th, down to 4th sometimes, back on the gas. It's a tight turn. It's the tight end of the egg-shaped track, as we talked about, and Dixon will be making some in-car adjustments right now with his weight jacker and roll bar adjustments to try to get that car to work just a little bit happier when it gets up to the disturbed air coming off Elio's car up in front.
Why don't we go for a ride, watch out the back of Elio's car, and just listen to the difference as we go around this twin ring Motegi 1.5 miles. Here we go.
You're in 3 and 4 off the gas, back on now down the front stretch. Through 1 and 2, no lifting whatsoever. Now let's head down to turn 3. And that's where the drivers, Marty, earn their money, because you want to keep the car going as quickly as possible through the center of the turn. And if the car handles well, you don't scrub off speed. You don't have to turn the steering wheel too much, which really scrubs the speed off in the turn. And that's what you want to do, but you have to have consistency lap after lap over the fuel run.
And since that wiggle, Elio has opened up a bigger lead. It's now half a second, Jackaroot.
Fellas, remember when the race started, the wind was running from turn 1 directly down the backstretch. That's the way all of the wind here. Not as gusty as yesterday. Well, now the wind is shifted 90 degrees. It is running from the backstretch right into the face of the crowd here on the main grandstand. For Elio Castroneves, that has changed the handling of the car. And what they are discussing right now is what they will do in terms of little changes to compensate for that. He has already made several changes with the onboard weight jacker, but look for some wing adjustments on Elio Castroneves, your leader, when they pit next, which could be in 18 to 20 laps.
Well, Jack, that's some great information, because what that does, instead of giving you a tailwind into the turn, now you're turning into turn 1 and the car's working not badly, but as you enter into 2, the air comes across the front and maybe can make the back of the car just a little bit loose because you get that wind going over the front wings. Conversely, what ends up happening is you get through 3 going into 4, that wind catches the side of the car and pushes the car up the racetrack, going up towards turn 4, out towards the wall. And remember, that's the tightest end of the racetrack, and maybe the track changing now and the wind changing, maybe that's the reason why we saw the back end of Scott Dixon's car take a bit of a wiggle.
Elio Castroneves now has got a total of 89 laps led, soon to be 90, and that'll be 94 for the year. And that gives him the lap lead total for the season. Remember, Marco Andretti led 85 back at our first race at Homestead, Miami. Now let's go back a little further, and you can see that we've got some action brewing. That's Danica Patrick in 8th. Townsend Bell right in front of her in the 23 car is 7th place, and Ed Carpenter just outside of that picture to your right. You're on board with Danica. Let's get more from Jackaroot.
Danica Patrick has been battling an understeer problem. They tried to correct it with a tire pressure change. They're afraid to make a wing change. Why? Because as much as the car is understeering in the middle and out of the corner, it's just a tad loose going into the corner. During this next pit stop, they will try to chip away at that as well. And now the yellow comes out, guys.
And we're getting word that Vitor Meira may have just had some contact with the wall. And we have our 3rd caution here on lap 92 of 200. So we're hearing that Vitor, we don't know exactly how much damage. We'll see if our host broadcasters from Japan can give us a view of exactly what happened. There is the National Guard Delphi machine. Looks like it's still none the worse for wear. Of course, we haven't seen the right side yet.
Well, if that is the case, remember Vitor last year crashed in practice about 3 or 4 laps into the first day of practice, and they ended up having to go to the backup car, and then ended up having a vehicle that was not very happy in the race, and they turned around and parked it because of handling issues.
And that was on lap 65. Let's get more from Jackaroot.
You got to forgive Vitor and the Delphi National Guard crew if they don't like coming to Japan. Yesterday, on top of all that you've related, as they were putting their car through the final warm-up before putting it on the grid, they noticed that the fuel pump was leaking a little bit. They started to rev the engine, and that fuel pump started to pump out the fuel into the cockpit, not the cockpit, but the engine compartment of the car. They almost missed the command to start engines if it had gone off on time, because they were back in the pits changing the fuel pump. But because of the weepers, they were able they were able to make the change, and you see them hard at work while the rest of the grid is being introduced. So if the Panther team wants to maybe forego this next season, no one would blame them. The pits are open, fellas. Look for feeding time at the zoo here in Japan.
Yeah, it's been 42 laps since our leaders have stopped, and that video, of course, was yesterday, and they were the only team that was happy to see the mess that we had in turn 4 with the Weepers. We do expect everybody to make a stop here. So far, we still haven't seen anybody be able to stretch that fuel window. And we're almost to the halfway mark of the race. And here comes everybody down pit lane. Pretty much everybody. There's about 3, 4 cars. And one of them looked like he messed it. Whoa,
that was Vitor.
That was Vitor. And let's check in with Jackaroo once again.
Elio Castroneves leads the field down. They will make an adjustment this time. Watch Rick Reineman. He has trouble getting the right front off. Instead, the left front tire changer makes the change. They adjust the right front wing this time. Meanwhile, a wing adjustment on the number 10, your third place car before this pit stop, as the Target Chip Ganassi team continues to try and chase down Elio Castroneves.
And Jack, I know you're all alone there, and we noticed from our vantage point on the screen that the 20 car, yes, they're just getting underway. The motor was killed, and what a bad break for Ed Carpenter. He was running in the 8th position when they came in. Jack, you've got more on that?
Remember at the beginning of the day, we said that Larry Curry told me that anything less than a 5th place, or I mean a 3rd place or better podium finish was going to be a failed trip to Japan. Well, that's just another installment. I checked with Larry and asked him about the run of Ed Carpenter before that miscue on pit road. He said, we're running as fast as the leaders, but we just can't get a break. So bad luck is affecting him. I asked Tony George about the run of the car that he is the tactician for, AJ Foyt IV, and he gave me that universal signal where you hold your nose, and it basically says in any language, we just stink today.
Well, and we see here on the replay, Jack, exactly what happened. It was AJ Foyt IV coming out the very time Ed was coming in.
And you have to say they are teammate cars, and they know they're obviously parked one next to each other, so there's just no room for error when it's your team car like that has that situation. It's just a lack of communication between the two teams of what's going on here. On the left-hand side, you see the white and silver car of AJ Foyt IV trying to actually depart his pit box, and then the yellow car that we're on board with right now of Ed Carpenter in the Menards car just trying to come in. Now, Ed is not in fault of that. It's actually the team for AJ Foyt IV releasing him, knowing that obviously their teammate car is coming in the pit box for service.
And Ed is coming back in to get that tire perhaps checked one more time. We can tell you also our scoring monitor shows Vitor Meira now out of the race. We'll confirm that to be sure. Remember, he had brushed the wall, so obviously there may be a little more damage than we anticipated originally. And they're going to top it off. And yes, they're checking the suspension pieces on the rear. And we'll find out if they send him back out. They're saying okay. Now remember, we're under caution here.
Fellas, what they're doing now is they just want to make sure that all the suspension parts are good. And Ed Carpenter is talking to Larry Curry. And he's a little uneasy, but he wants to persevere and continue on. Back to you.
All right, great, Jack. You are doing a great job. You're all alone out there. We have a total of 12 cars on the lead lap, so Ed will fall back to the 12th position, but at least he stays on that lead position lap. We can tell you that the 4 is behind the wall, Vitor Meira, and we do have a different leader. There goes Vitor Meira's car, so another tough year at Motegi for the National Guard Delphi crew, as they're done for the day, and the right rear suspension is the reason that they are out of the race. We do have a new race leader. Scott Dixon's crew got him out of the pit before Elio Castroneves. Remember the trouble that Rick Reineman had on the right front tire change on the 3 car? Well, it's put Castroneves back in 2nd. Tony Kanaan is 3rd. Dan Wheldon is 4th. Ryan Briscoe is 5th. Darren Manning 6th. Danica Patrick is 7th, as we're getting ready to go back to green flag racing.
Now remember, we talked about a little bit lighter downforce level on both the target cars, and every time they would get close to the car in front, Elio Castroneves could not get by. Let's see if Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon, especially Dixon, who's leading right now, can walk away from Castroneves, meaning that he had the faster car, which it looked like he did before.
That's Danica Patrick going underneath the 14 of Darren Manning. And that is 4 positions. So move Danica up to 6th. That is your top 9 cars in your screen right there, all the way back to Ryan Hunter-Reay in 9th. So Danica picks up 1 spot. Everybody else pretty much in station. And now she looks like she's got Briscoe in her sights and she's going underneath.
A nice move, a nice timing coming off of turns 3 and 4. Got a draft off of Briscoe, timed it right and just dove down the inside. Didn't give him any chance to be able to move down and take the line. Now Darren Manning's going to have a look.
Well, the one thing that's impressive here, remember Danica normally on the restarts, she's not as aggressive as the run progresses. She gets better. The car comes in better for her. But right now, she, as we hit the halfway mark of this race, picks up 2 spots.
Well, when we listened to her on board before, she was very tentative going into the turns, and she was off the gas a lot when she was traveling behind the cars in front. And now they must have made some changes during that back pit stop because she's very confident of her race car now.
And pulling away from those 2 cars. Meanwhile, Jack Arute is caught up with a disappointed Vitor Meira.
Let's find out exactly what happened. Vitor, what happened out there to you?
Howard was coming out of the pits and he obviously went inside. And we were having brake problems. The thing was long. As soon as he came to the track, I tried to stop a little bit with brake. It just went long and I couldn't stop. It's a shame because the Delphi National Guard car was getting much better as the run went by. And now we can't do anything else anymore.
Guys?
All right, thanks, Jack. Now, he mentioned Howard. That's Jay Howard, who was a lap traffic. But talk to people about long pedal in case they don't know what he's talking about.
What ends up happening is that it's just like the pedal in your car when you drive to work in the morning, that when you put your foot on the pedal, there's a lot of resistance there. There's a lot of pressure there. Well, if you had a problem with your brake here on a race car or on a road car, it's a long pedal, which means it goes all the way down to the floorboard, and there's a problem with the braking system. That's exactly the problem it sounds like they had with Vitor's car. Now, you know, when you're going to work in the morning, maybe you can contend with that and then take it into the shop to get fixed. But when you're going 200 miles an hour, Marty, it could certainly make for an uneasy day. And it seemed like he was going to try and live with it, but he got caught out by this situation.
You're looking at the battle for 3rd and 4th, Tony Kanaan and Dan Weldon. But meanwhile, it looks like the guy who is out in front in the clean air is able to pull away because Scott Dixon has now opened a 7/10 of a second lead over Helio Castroneves. Now remember, it was Scott Dixon who won our first race of the year back at Homestead, Miami. That too was a 1.5-mile oval. Let's talk a little NASCAR on ESPN Sunday. It is the nationwide series. The 2.5-mile road course at Mexico City is the site. It's presented by Kawasaki. Sunday afternoon coverage begins with NASCAR Countdown at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Back here at Twin Ring Motegi, it is Scott Dixon out by a second in front of Helio Castroneves and Tony Kanaan by a 1.5 seconds. And you saw something during the break on Kanaan's car, or actually heard it?
Well, it seems like he was struggling with the car through the middle of the turn. He was up and down the throttle. That's very uncharacteristic for Tony Kanaan because usually he's very smooth. Now, as we go through turns 1 and 2, he's hard on the gas, and we'll have to listen when we head down towards 3 and 4 next time. Remember, he has some onboard adjustments that he can make. That's a long time off the gas compared to where he was before, but as the car continues to run, he might make some adjustments and improve that.
Let's check in with Jack Arute.
Scott, you're going to like this comment. I checked in with George Klutz, who calls the shots for Tony Kanaan. I said, is everything okay? And he said, why? He says, well, we heard the kind of a different sound. And he just looked at me and he goes, we're fine, we're fine.
Well, somebody that's not fine was Danica Patrick there for a second. She was about ready to come down to her line, Marty, and got surprised.
Yeah, that was Ryan Briscoe that just flew around her, and now you've got lap traffic around both of them. They clear and continue on. And that was Jay Howard in the 24 that was the lap vehicle. So now put Briscoe up to 5th, move Danica back to 6th. Don't know exactly what happened to her. It looked like she got up in the gray a little bit, may have had to get out of it.
Well, she turned 187 miles an hour that last lap, and most of the people are running 194. I've been watching the screen, and all the drivers in the top 10 that are on the same lap have been turning consistently all at 194 miles an hour, Marty. So all the cars seem to be very consistent and very much in touch with each other. Nobody seems to be running away with this.
Jack, you've got more on Danica?
Car. Remember, she's been chasing that tight condition with a little looseness going in. Well, that last pit stop, they did add a little front wing. She likes the car much better. As far as what happened with that close confrontation with Ryan Briscoe, well, let's just say that it was not made for TV radio transmission.
And Jack, while you were finishing up, we saw from our high camera shot that AJ Foyt IV had white-walled the right side tires. There you can see it right there. And he is out of this race as they've got damage. He's out of the cockpit. So one of the two Vision cars is done with their chance of winning. And meanwhile, the battle up front is not much of a battle at all, because Scott Dixon has now opened a 1.1 second lead over Helio Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, Dan Weldon, and Ryan Briscoe. That's your top 5. Going back to the start of the 07 season, that's 20 races. Dixon has now led 15 of them. Welcome back to the Firestone IndyCar 300 at Japan. Let's talk about the motorsports calendar on ESPN tomorrow. It's the American Le Mans Series from Long Beach, 12:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Nationwide Series at Mexico City at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. And then the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. And if you're interested, how about showing you the top 5 qualifiers from today's session here at Long Beach, where Scott and I are broadcasting from. It's Justin Wilson, Alex Tagliani in a great run, Frank Pereira, Will Power, and Paul Tracy. It's going to be a great race. That field is very, very tight. And as we go back trackside here, it is Scott Dixon, Helio Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, your top 3, and Dixon in control. Let's check in once again with Jack Arute.
Well, Marty, we caught up with AJ Foyt IV. AJ, things were going pretty good. Then you went a lap down, and then all of a sudden, well, it all just fell right out of the basket. What happened?
Yeah, it was going fine. We lost a lap in the pits. We had a great car running behind the leaders there for a little bit, but then we came in here and had contact with Ed. Miscommunication when to leave the pit box. So then I went out there all pissed off and just pancaked the wall. Just disappointed right now, and know we had a good car to finish in a good place this weekend.
Where was that anger that ended up putting you up out of the car? Was it out of the race? Was that because of the fact that you clipped Ed, or that Ed clipped you?
No, well, Ed was coming in, and my right front guy told me to go. We were just going to do a splash and go and try to get out in front of the leaders and get our lap back. But, you know, Ed was obviously coming in his pit box, so screwed our day up.
Guys, it never ceases to amaze me, and Scott, you did it for so many years, how when you make a mistake, it can come back and bite you if you get emotional in a race car.
That's the first time he sounded like grandfather.
You know, and that's why I meant the emotion I did when you and I looked at each other when he said that. But, you know, you have to departmentize all these things that go on. And if something happens on the track, or if it actually happens in the pit lane, you need to just put that away and close the door in that room and get on to something else, because it won't do you any good. And, you know, there's no places for grudges, and there's no places for holding anything inside you when you get back on the racetrack. And not that he has a grudge against his teammate, but sometimes that happens in motor racing. It's one of those things.
Well, remember last year when Tony Kanaan and Danica Patrick, there's Kanaan, you're on board with him right now. You see the battle for third that's going on. Remember when he got on the radio, he was so mad, if that ever happens again, I'm not going to run for this team ever again.
And your emotions have to be in check, and that's what AJ IV had to do when he left, because otherwise he took it onto the racetrack as he did, and you can't do that at 205 or 210 miles an hour.
You know, the thing I noticed, I keep watching Helio coming out of that last corner. He takes a different line than Tony Kanaan.
Comes out of the turn and then heads down to the low side, and he did that a lot last year also, and he can do it coming off turns 1 and 2 because it is a larger arc than turns 3 and 4. And 3 and 4, it's a little bit more difficult because of the tightness of the turn. But sometimes you scrub off speed when you do that. But it's very interesting to see that he's able to do that. And maybe he's getting ready for that run at the end when you want to protect the low line when you get down to those laps, 10 or 15 laps.
And that will be dramatic for sure, because we have had some good finishes here in the past. We've also had some fuel economy runs in the 6-year history of this event. Right now, it is Scott Dixon has opened up a 3-second lead over Helio Castroneves. You're looking at the race leader at Twin Ring Motegi. That is Scott Dixon. Hideki Muto is right in front of him. Muto is already 1 lap down. We have 10 cars shown on the lead lap right now as we're working lap 131 of 200. And you saw there where Dixon has never won here. In fact, his best finish was 4th last season. But right now, he has opened up the biggest margin of the race. There have only been 2 leaders, a total of 3 lead changes. And it's the 2 leaders have been Helio Castroneves for 92 laps and Scott Dixon for 37. All right, we're getting close to that second round of pit stops. Let's check in on the strategy from Japan with Jack Arute.
Here's where it really gets interesting with tacticians. For Mike Hall and his crew, for the leader, Scott Dixon, they have calculated that they are 2 gallons short of being able to come in and pit around lap 144 and be able to finish this race. So they are now discussing the possibility and the probability that Scott Dixon, under this next pit stop, if it is under green, will take a splash of fuel and try and catch up on the back end. This is going to be interesting. Mike Hall counseled his driver and said, look, we're going to try and go a little differently and let the rest of the teams hopefully take a full tank, and then we'll take our full tank later in the race. It won't take as much time. This is when you begin to turn your cards that are face down, face up, one at a time.
What do you think of that strategy?
Well, you know, he knows the game. He understands it very well. And there's such a pack of racing going on right now for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And I think what they're going to try and do is try and keep themselves separate on the racetrack to this gaggle of cars. It actually seems like they can't get away from each other.
Yeah, this is some of the best action on the track. And there you see on the high side, there is Tony Kanaan. Can he make it stick? No. Again, he has to back out of it.
And, you know, I mentioned before, it didn't sound like he could keep on the throttle mid-turn before. And I do not think that his car's handling is as good as it was the first segment right now, because he cannot keep the speed up mid-turn.
And look as it costs him, because the 10 of Dan Wheldon gets underneath him. That is for position as well. And now he's up in the gray. He's going to lose another spot. So all of a sudden, Tony Kanaan drops 2 positions here on lap 135. We've got to take a break because we're about 8 laps from the second round of pit stops. We want to get this done so we won't miss that. Stay with us. We'll find out what happened to Tony Kanaan. That's Scott Dixon, your race leader. The car right in front of him is Hideki Muto. And the reason we want to give him a little shout is because he's already, there he is, right at the bottom of your screen. He's 1 lap down, soon to be 2, except one problem. He's actually turning laps as fast or faster than our race leader at 194 and change.
Well, he wants to keep in front of Dixon, obviously, in the hopes of getting his lap back, if that's at all possible, through some strategy. Now, in this situation, because he's down a lap, he's just going to keep his foot pedal to the metal, as they call it. And it's disappointing when you're a lap down and you know you have a fast race car, but just that mistake leaving the pit lane has cost him that lap that he's lost.
Jack, you've got more?
Yeah, there are no secrets. Everybody, at least one member of each team, monitors the onboard radios for these cars. Mike Hall has just radioed to Scott Dixon, your leader, that they will pit in 3 laps. Guess who was one of the first to get radioed that same information? Hideki Muto. He just needs to stay out. We're about ready for another sequence of pit stops, guys.
And we get word that the 17 of Ryan Hunter-Ray peels off from his 8th position. There he is, getting a 4-tire change and a fresh load of ethanol as he'll get back out to the battle. They're waiting for the fuel, getting every ounce. Whoa, wait a minute. Problem, they put him back up, back down. That's costly.
Whatever the miscue is on that, that's 3 or 4 extra seconds, and tough to make up on the racetrack in that type of situation.
That's Townsend Bell at the top of your screen, and Darren Manning coming in with the 14 car. So those 2. And now we get a caution again as Roger Yasukawa is into the wall. Not a lot of severe damage, but that's right on the front stretch. So those teams can continue their pit work, but the pit lane will be closed. And again, it comes right at a time when we would have seen green flag pit stops for everybody.
Well, in this situation right now, if Dixon was going to take a light load underneath green, you can rest assured that they will take a full load underneath this yellow, so that will maybe change their strategy. With Roger Yasukawa, it doesn't look like there's a lot of damage there, but the skid marks leading up to where his car is stopped makes it look like he just lost it coming out of 4 and was lucky not to collect the wall.
So fuel strategy is basically out the window again, because everybody is going to be topping off, getting 4 fresh tires, and reloading.
And the light that you saw that was flashing, that is the pit closed light, and all the drivers see that, and they know that they cannot come into pit lane once that light is flashing.
Jack has caught up with Mike Hull.
Mike, we know that you were right on the cusp of maybe being able to play some games near the end of the race. What does this caution do to your thought process now?
Well, everybody's going to have to stop again, so we'll just see what the games provide us toward the end of the race.
The pits are open. He needs to go back to work, so we don't want to bother him. Fellas, by my calculations, it depends on how long this caution is. If they watch for anybody that maybe wants to lay out there a little longer than possible. 150 is that magic mark. I'm going to watch your leader and see if he takes a full load. I agree with you, Scott. I think he should, and then take the gas and go at the end.
Well, and the thing is, as they get ready to come down your way, the farthest run we've seen has been 51 laps by Hideki Muto. Here we are on lap 143. Do the math. Nobody can make it from here. Let's send it back to Jack.
At the front of the grid is Scott Dixon, his teammate Dan Wheldon. They come in formation and pull onto the pits. It'll be an exchange of the Firestone Firehawk tires. Checking both fuel loads to see if they take a full load. Yes, they are staying. They're bringing the first car out. Scott Dixon, followed by a gaggle, along with Kanaan, Team Penske, and Dan Wheldon, his teammate.
And the second one out was the 6th of Ryan Briscoe. And he picks up a couple of spots. You're on board with Tony Kanaan, and there is Danica Patrick. So
when Briscoe comes in a little bit further back in the queue and he can come out a little bit further ahead, it makes you wonder if they put in as much fuel, knowing they do probably have to stop and just take a little bit shorter fuel run. It gives you a couple positions on track position.
There is Ed Carpenter right behind Danica. So our race leader will continue to be Scott Dixon. And right behind him is now Ryan Briscoe. So we'll sort it all out. As you see, we are under our 4th caution here at Twin Ring. Under our 4th caution at Twin Ring Motegi, and we need to clarify something. No contact for Roger Yasukawa in the 77 car. It was a major brake issue.
Yeah, and he had an overheating of the brakes, and the skid marks on the track leading up to where the car was parked made me believe that possibly he lost control of the car and then skidded to a stop. But that was not the situation whatsoever. Just obviously a problem with the brakes. The brakes overheated, and they said caught on fire. Haven't heard that one before, but that was the reason for the skid marks on the track. So great job by him to get out of the way of the cars on the racetrack.
Well, as we continue under our 4th caution, they have got a bit of cleanup to take care of. As let's take a look and see. Yeah, smoke them if you got them.
You know, I have never seen that on an oval, on a road course. You know, when you get them overheated, absolutely. But that is very strange.
Great camera work, guys. All right, let's talk a little NASCAR with the Sprint Cup on an off weekend. It will be the Nationwide Series on the 2.5-mile road course in Mexico City. The NASCAR Nationwide Series, presented by Kawasaki on ESPN Sunday afternoon. Coverage begins with NASCAR Countdown at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And the sweepers are still out on the track, so let's get a commercial break here and get back before we go green with our leaders, Scott Dixon and Ryan Briscoe in second. Back at Twin Ring Motegi, we're under our 4th caution and just past the bottom of the hour. It's the Firestone INDYCAR 300. Glad that you're with us. And we've had some shakeups here in pit lane as some late-minute pit stops, as there are several. In fact, it's Danica Patrick, Ed Carpenter, and the 3 of Elio Castroneves. Let's send it to Jack Arute.
Watch Danica Patrick. They made a decision to try and top off the field, as does the Team Vision car and Elio Castroneves. These cars pack the fuel in. Now, by my calculations, that will put them precariously close to being able to go the distance, guys. Remember, under caution, you're able to make almost 2.5 times the fuel mileage, so that means about 12 to 13 miles to the gallon. This one's going to come right down to the white flag. Wouldn't surprise me if one car sputters minus about 2 ounces of ethanol.
Well, and you're right, Jack. Remember, we did point it out that the Hideki Muto went 51 laps. That's the farthest we've seen anybody go with a tank of ethanol here at Twin Ring Motegi. When we get ready to go back to green, which will be in 1 lap, it will be Scott Dixon, Ryan Briscoe, Tony Kanaan, Dan Weldon, and then it looks like they're showing Danica Patrick in 5th, Ed Carpenter in 6th, Elio Castroneves in 7th.
I like that strategy. You know, something that goes green all the way to the end. You just might see Danica Patrick standing on the podium and maybe in the middle.
Especially Elio. Remember, he was the big loser in the pit stop battle. He came out in 5th, and now he gets a top off on the fuel and really only gave up 2 more spots.
You know, in this situation right now, if the car is going to work well for you, and these guys have been running so close together anyways, you're not going to lose touch with them.
We're going to be green with 49 laps to go. Will one of those 3 that topped off be the winner? We'll find out. Dixon pulls away again. And look at Carpenter looking to go underneath Danica Patrick. And here comes Elio. He makes easy work of it.
Well, you know, we talked about Danica sometimes not being so strong on restarts, but previously today she had a couple of great ones. That one, not so much so, but you can be conservative on fuel, but you have to stay in touch with the lead pack, and she's not doing that now.
So there you see that there is a bit of a gap now. Back to Danica. She's at the top of your screen. Meanwhile, Dixon is already in 1 lap, opened up an 0.8 of a second lead. I think they got the wick turned up on the number 9 car.
Well, he wants to get out in front, probably turn the fuel back, try to conserve just a little bit. And Kanaan takes a nice run underneath Briscoe, but can't get it done again.
Let's watch his hands, see what happens through there. Maybe we can get that shot again from our host broadcasters. The battle right there with Briscoe and Kanaan. And Jack, you got more?
Yeah, forgive Tony Kanaan if he tries to do the parry and thrust on the Ryan Briscoe car. You see, Tony Kanaan has been given the green light to use as much fuel as he wants. They are nowhere near close to being able to go the distance. They just radioed TK that he's going to have to pit with 6 laps to go regardless, and then they cap that with just go, Daddy, go.
And see, that's the same situation that Dixon's in, and in fact all these cars except for the 3 that stopped right before we went back to green flag racing.
Now Danica is keeping pace with the cars in front, although there's that bit of a gap that she lost from the restart. One makes you think whether she could be a little bit closer to try to be able to get a little bit of a draft off the cars in front to sort of conserve some fuel.
Well, let's find out from Jack. Does she have a problem, or she got the wick turned back?
Well, she has the wick turned back, and it basically was a mistake by Danica Patrick on that restart. Scott, you called it good from the booth there, and what she did is she radioed her crew very calmly and said, hey guys, sorry about that. Now she's settled in to ethanol conservation mode.
All right, so you see the update on Danica, and meanwhile, you look at Tony Kanaan as he is in 2nd place by 1.5 seconds, and here comes, that looks like Elio Castroneves, or no, Brian Briscoe, I should say, in the 6 car, going underneath and around Dan Weldon. So move Briscoe up to 3rd, bump Weldon back to 4th. There's Ed Carpenter trying to fight his way into the screen, and the yellow Menards car. He is in 5th, so they are only 2 spots away from their goal for Vision Racing.
Remember how strong Vision Racing was at Miami, qualifying up the front, had a problem with the rear wing in post-qualifying inspection. The cars went to the back of the grid, and lo and behold, both the cars were strong in the race. Now, this team is known as an oval racing team. Maybe their drivers are not great on road courses, so maybe you didn't expect that much out of them at St. Petersburg, but this team is just continuing to get stronger each and every year, and I think a podium, if not this weekend, is going to be very much in the future for these guys here on the Vision Racing team.
Well, Carpenter running in 5th, and that's exactly where he finished in the season opener at Homestead, Miami. Jack Arute.
I talked to Ed Carpenter just before the start of this race, and I asked him what the difference is, why this team is much better as we watch one car peel off, and that is the Hideki Motu coming onto pit road. And he said it's being consistent. He said over the course of the last 2 years, he has concentrated on that. When you take a look at the laps that he's turned in today, consistency has indeed been his forte.
And as you watch his hands, Marty, his car is handling very well because he's not turning the steering wheel all that much compared to what we saw on Tony Kanaan's car. I mean, watch his right hand. It's somewhere up around the 1 to 2 o'clock area. Remember, Tony Kanaan seemed to be struggling mid-turn, and his right hand was getting all the way up towards the top about the 12 o'clock area on the clock, and that seemed like a car that was not working all that well for him.
While all this was going on, Ryan Hunter-Reay got around Danica Patrick. Hunter-Reay now in 7th. Danica falls back to 8th. Meanwhile, up front, Scott Dixon with the wick turned up full force is 1 second ahead of Tony Kanaan and 1.2 seconds ahead of Ryan Briscoe. As we move on a little further back, there is Ryan Hunter-Reay. And Ryan, as we said, he is 4 seconds behind the race leader right now. And his turning laps, he is the fastest car on the racetrack at 196 miles an hour. That's 1.5 miles faster than our race leader the last lap.
Ryan Hunter-Reay is a guy that just consistently works hard. He puts his nose to the grindstone, very focused when you talk to him, very fit, and is eager to do a great job here. He's got this chance with the Ray Hall Letterman team and knows that he has to make the most of it.
What's interesting is Helio Castroneves is not moving forward. Remember, this is the guy that's led 92 laps here at this race, and he's about to possibly get past, maybe even on the high side. Nope. Ryan says, no, I don't think I like it up there.
I think it's fuel conservation.
Could very well be. Let's check in with Jackaroo.
Helio Castroneves is one of the cars that is running in what we call slot 4. He has just been instructed by Tim Cindric to make fuel, to try and conserve ethanol. So this is going to be an economy run for a lot of drivers. Ditto for Scott Dixon as well. He's been given the go-to as well to make ethanol. This one's going to be a dandy one down to the last couple of laps, fellas.
Oh, wait a minute. So if they've changed strategy after running all those laps at full throttle, now you're going to dial it back. I still don't. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Remember what happened to him at Chicago last year? Ran out of fuel on the last corner of the last lap, and it cost him the championship. We're going to take a short break. There is your top 5 after 163 of 200 here at Twin Ring. Coming up Sunday, it's the American Le Mans Series at Long Beach, 12:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. The rest of our weekend calendar, NASCAR Nationwide Series at Mexico, Sunday 1:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, and then the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Here at Twin Ring Motegi, we can tell you during the break, Dan Wheldon got around Ryan Briscoe and left him. And I'm wondering now if Briscoe has turned the wick back a little bit, because here comes the 20 of Ed Carpenter, and Ryan Hunter-Reay, he has got to be on full tilt boogie. There is Briscoe, but Hunter-Reay is about ready to get past Ed Carpenter. There he is. Great camera work, guys, zooming in on it. And here comes Ryan underneath the 20. Yo, that's close!
Oh, close at 200 miles an hour.
I think we better check to see if the Firestone logo is still on those tires. That was extremely close. With 30 laps remaining, Ryan Hunter-Reay is now moved up into the top 5.
You know, and I don't think that Ryan Hunter-Reay can make it on fuel mileage, so he's probably just going as fast as he can because he knows he has to make one more stop. Carpenter came in, remember, and splashed fuel along with Danica Patrick and Helio Castroneves. So those are the ones that are probably trying to run just a little bit more conservative on fuel. And we see Carpenter right there in the Menards car, and then just behind him is Helio Castroneves. And I would gotta say that those are the guys that are just trying to trim back, as we heard before, and trying to make some fuel mileage. And you can see Castroneves is right behind him, and as we know, he's affectionately known as Twinkle Toes by everybody else that's here in the paddock area from his win on Dancing with the Stars.
You mentioned pits. Let's give you the numbers. Ryan Hunter-Reay stopped 31 laps ago, now 32 as he goes by the stripe. Then it's 28 for our top 4 of Dixon, Kanaan, Weldon, and Briscoe. Then it's 23 laps ago for those 3 that we talked about: Carpenter, Castroneves, and Danica Patrick. So that gives you the fuel loads for each of the cars. Here are 2 of them that stopped 28 laps ago. And Dan Weldon is on the charge. He has gotten around Tony Kanaan. So move Weldon to second behind his teammate of Scott Dixon. And there is Ryan Briscoe looking like he wants to get around Kanaan as well. Tony's having none of it. We go on board.
Through 3 and 4, now getting back on the throttle. Remember, if they do have to come into the pit lane, it's going to be for a splash and go. No tires, no adjustments on tire pressures, and probably no wing changes. So whatever they have, what kind of car is handling around the racetrack at both ends right now is probably what they're going to have until the end of the race.
10 cars on the lead lap. Scott Dixon has a second lead over his teammate Dan Weldon. What's the latest on strategy, Jackaroo?
Well, Dan Weldon is badly needed in terms of helping Scott Dixon. Dixon is finding himself now, get this, 3 laps short of being able to go the distance. He, in essence, fellas, needs 1 caution lap, and they could go the distance. Things could change, though, if Weldon can catch him and they can hook up in a 2-car tango and maybe try to make a little fuel that way.
Well, we've got 25 laps remaining here at Twin Ring, as those 2 are in front by about 0.7 of a second. From Weldon back to 3rd place, Tony Kanaan. We're going to take one more break, and then we'll be with you to the finish here at the Firestone IndyCar 300. ESPN's presentation of the Firestone IndyCar 300 at Japan, brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing, and by ethanol, fueling America's future. And right now at Twin Ring Motegi, there's a lot of guys that would like some more ethanol, including Ryan Briscoe. But Briscoe has fallen back to 7th spot, and we'll be able to show you why, because he gets it high coming out of turn number 4. With 20 laps remaining, a costly error, as here comes the replay. We'll be able to show you.
Number 3 and 4 is the tight turn out of this Motegi track, 1 and 2 being wide open. And here he is on the high side of Ryan Hunter-Reay, just creeping the car up into the gray. No traction there. You get on the marbles and just scrubs the softer barrier a small amount and probably didn't do any damage to the car, so he lives to continue on. And here he goes. Remember, this is a feeling where you feel like you're driving on ice. The car is slowly going towards the wall. Been there, done that myself, and it's not a great feeling, Marty.
And you're looking towards the front of the field. And that is one of the Target Ganassi cars going around Hideki Muto. Muto is 2 laps down. There is Ryan Hunter-Reay closing in on Tony Kanaan. That's the battle we want to show you, because Ryan is now up to 4th and challenging for 3rd as the laps continue to wind down. Question is, who has fuel? Ryan is going to have to stop. We know that for a fact. It's been 43 laps since he was into pit lane. He's just trying to get as much ground as he can. There's Ed Carpenter coming up behind him. Car on the bottom, the red and blue, that's Hideki Muto. As we said, he's a couple of laps down. While all this is going on, let's get back to the front. It is Scott Dixon by 0.8 of a second over his teammate Dan Weldon. Then Tony Kanaan 3rd, Ryan Hunter-Reay 4th, and Ed Carpenter 5th. Our Firestone lap leaders, we've only had 2, Elio Castroneves and Scott Dixon. And Dixon's about to take the overall lap lead count here with 16 to go next time by. The question we're all waiting for, Scott, is who blinks first and has to come to pit lane?
Well, I believe a lot of those guys absolutely have to come into pit lane, but the ones that we're watching is Carpenter, who's in 5th, and Castroneves, who is in 6th. Those guys pitted 36 laps ago. Everybody else was 41, 42 laps ago. So that's going to be the true tell right now, is to see how many of the mileage those guys can make, simply from the fact that they're going to have to pedal back, reduce their speed, but they're still running speeds that are close to Dixon and Weldon who are running up front.
Remember, it is Ed Carpenter in that yellow number 20, Danica Patrick and Elio Castroneves that pitted latest of all the lead cars on the lead lap. Meanwhile, everybody's gone back up in speed. During the commercial break, we saw some laps at the 190-mile-an-hour range, and nobody wanted to pass anybody. All of a sudden, they're all back at 194 and change.
I think that was in hope of trying to make some fuel mileage for a few laps to see if they had any chance of making it to the end. They probably got word to say there's not any case of any of those guys up front, in my belief, that it can actually make it all the way through the end without at least one more stop.
Well, there is Tony Kanaan right now in third place, a full 2 seconds behind our race leader of Scott Dixon. Now, Dixon, Weldon, and Kanaan, the top three, all pitted 43 laps ago. The most we've seen any car go this race is 51. The math still doesn't add up.
You know what's important right now also is that once they get the call to come into the pit lane, there's a lot of pressure on the drivers to have a very fast in-lap. That means to come into the pit lane as quickly as possible on the apron, get into your pit box. The pressure is on the crew to just get the car fueled and then send the car off as fast as possible. The pressure then returns to the driver to get back up to speed as fast as possible. And that's what's going to happen here in the next few laps. So the drivers are going to try and stretch a lead out from the car behind. So watch Mike Hall, who's a strategist for Target, Chip Ganassi, looking on board, and he sits there. He knows what's going on. He's playing a game in his mind right now. And it's going to be interesting to see who can put all the pieces of the puzzle together, because the speeds are so even here right now. It might just come down to track position after the pit stop.
This time by, it'll be 11 laps to go. And we're getting word that the 17 of Ryan Hunter-Reay, with 50 laps since his last pit, will be making his stop this time by. So Ryan is going to surrender his top 5 position. There he is. He had made it up to 4th. Gave it a great run, but he is the first that has to blink and come in to top off with just enough fuel to get to the finish line. You can see the scroll across the top. It tells you what pit or what lap they last pitted on, but with less than 10 laps to go now, it's just a matter of who blinks next.
And you see the 10 car of Dan Weldon getting closer to the number 9 target machine of Scott Dixon. And what he's going to try and do is just run as hard as he can, try to catch up, hopefully have a better pit stop than his teammate, or maybe have a better in-lap and out-lap. It'll be interesting to see if they decide to bring in both those cars in the same lap or change the strategy and one comes in on a different lap to give them more space in the pit boxes, Marty.
Jack, you've got more on Ganassi?
Scott Dixon specifically. Mike Hall just had a conversation with Scott Dixon and reminded him that the fuel consumption right now, he compared it to Chicago. Remember Chicago? He came up short to Dario Franchitti. He said, Scott, you're making the same mileage right now as Dario did in Chicago. But then he also added, looks like we're going to have to come in 2 to 3 laps.
Yeah, you saw Townsend Bell, the 23 car. He also came in. And there is Darren Manning. He has come in. So that means 7 cars still on the lead lap. But it looks like a lot of these cars are going to have to pit. The question will be when. Dixon's working lap 50 now since his last pit stop. So is Dan Weldon and Tony Kanaan, the top 3. Then in 4th place, Ed Carpenter has 5 more laps in hand over those guys. So Carpenter could steal this if he can make it stretch. We've got 6 laps to go. There is the number 20 of Ed Carpenter. He has never won an IndyCar, and he's peeling off.
That is a surprise.
Carpenter, who last pitted just 45 laps to go, is into pit lane.
And so remember, he was one of the first ones to come in at the beginning of the race also. They're not making fuel mileage.
So their chance of the podium finish is now over. Jack?
Ed Carpenter pulls down into pit road. Remember, that's a team that was using a lot of downforce. That means they consumed more ethanol. They were looking for a podium finish. But in the meantime, he takes on that precious fuel, but it will be costly in pursuit of a podium finish. In the meantime, Scott Dixon has been called onto pit road. And following him in will be his teammate in the number 10 car. Dixon Boy, this is slow. This is agonizing for a driver like Scott Dixon. Remember, it's 100 yards, a football field every second. They connect, and all of a sudden, it is less than 2 for a pit stop. And all of a sudden, Scott Dixon is well.
All right, and the other two are blinking as well. Dan Weldon and Tony Kanaan are in, and it looks like Helio Castroneves. Remember, he came in and topped off with 5 laps to go. It looks like Helio Castroneves is going to inherit the race lead, as there he is with now 4 laps to go. Jack?
Well, as Dan Weldon pulled off for his Helio Castroneves has been radioed by Tim Cindric. Only 5 to go. You must make fuel. That's an indication to me, guys. They're going to roll the dice and try and go without pulling onto pit road. This is going to be close.
He is working 48 laps since his last pit stop. There are 3 laps to go this time by. There is second place, Danica Patrick. She, too, on the same fuel strategy as with just about 2.5 laps to go. The question is, who's got it? And here she comes. Does she have enough fuel? She's going to take the high side. And Danica Patrick takes the lead at Motegi.
Castroneves must believe that he's not going to make it to the end unless he's throttling back as much as he is. Has she been able to conserve fuel enough to be able to run this pace and make it to the end? That's going to be the interesting fact right now. Remember, we said when these changes went on, will she be on the podium, maybe standing in the middle? This just might be her day. She's run so strong here before.
1.5 laps to go for Danica Patrick. Remember, at the beginning of this run, she fell back. She was saving fuel. Here she comes. The white flag this time by, and nobody within sight. Look at Mom Bev. 1.5 miles to go for Danica Patrick and the Motorola team. Could history be made at Twin Ring Motegi? Down the backstretch for one more time. Does she have enough fuel to get around the final 2 corners? Into turns 3 and 4. Danica Patrick coming out of 4, and boys, move over. The lady is coming through. Danica Patrick wins at Twin Ring Motegi. The celebration in the pit lane. That is Bev Patrick, Michael Andretti, and Jack, you're there.
Pandemonium has broken out. We're trying to get Bev Patrick as she gets all the congratulations with anybody. It reminds me of Jim Valvano when North Carolina State scored the upset in basketball so many years ago.
Oh, my
Bev,
gosh.
describe the feeling.
Oh, finally, we've worked so hard. She's worked so hard. I'm so proud of this team. Kyle is the man. Kyle Boyer did it all right there. Oh, thank God.
This was not a good weekend in terms of practice times for, and yet yesterday when we spoke, she said, look, I just want people to stop asking me about when I'm going to win.
We finally got the win that everybody's been waiting for, that she's been waiting for more than them. So thank God to the team. That was awesome. Andretti Green rules. Go! Ah!
You know, sometimes, guys, a picture says 1,000 words. That's what we got right here.
An incredible run. You never have to hear it again. When are you going to win your first race? She'll never be called the Anna Kournikova of open wheel racing. And we are going to stay right here until we talk to Danica Patrick, her first win in the IndyCar Series at Twin Ring Motegi. She led 32 laps here back at her first trip, and it got everybody buzzing. And if you remember that year, she went on to lead at the Indianapolis 500, and then it all began. When can you win? When can you win? Well, now, Danica Patrick has won.
She's going to make that long plane ride home for over, unless she's got tears coming to her eyes, of 14 hours back to the United States, a little easier for Danica Patrick.
Ticket sales at Kansas just went up. Jackaroo, it's all yours.
Danica Patrick in tears. Getting the congratulations of her mom, Bev. An emotional time. Danica Patrick, welcome to IndyCar Victory Lane.
Thank you. I feel like I was crying, but it's a long time coming. Finally.
When you take a look at this weekend, and especially in this race, battling an understeer condition.
Congrats, girl. Good job.
Marco Andretti congratulating Danica. Understeer, and then all of a sudden, fuel conservation. How tough for you?
I can't say that the last stint was exactly hard. You know, you're taking it easy and taking care of the car. I did feel like at the end I was, you know, that it was fast and that I was managing to save fuel while still keeping the speed up. And I'd heard, you know, from Kyle that, you know, all I need to beat is Elio. So when I saw him, I knew I had been kind of saving a little extra throughout the stint, and that, you know, I knew he was the one to beat, and I didn't want to make the mistake of, you know, not pushing really hard to get by him. So it managed to be a little bit safer probably than I saw. But thank you to Andretti Green, thank you to, you know, all my teammates, and finally.
You know what? I got to ask you, when are you going to win again?
I hope next weekend.
Guys.
All right, thanks, Jack. And can you sense the weight that is off her shoulders? She handled every question. There's Dad, TJ. He's crying. We saw this scene just 2 weeks ago, a first victory for 19-year-old Graham Rahal, the celebration with his dad, Bobby. And another first just 2 weeks later in Twin Ring Motegi, as the weight of the world is now off Danica Patrick's shoulders. And there is husband Paul, and he is thrilled. He's got a grin from ear to ear. And there is Tony George to come over to congratulate the family. And let's go back to Jack Arute.
Well, we've caught up with the family, Patrick. Let's start with TJ, because he's always the most animated one, and we never see him in pit road, but now you've made it to victory lane. A long, long time ago, you started with your daughter and talked about go-karting, and I think there's still a place in her new home in the Hospenthal household for a Borg Warner trophy. But where does this win fit in all the years that you two spent together in motorsports?
This is the best day of my life. I've dreamt about it. I'm just so proud of her. For all the grief she gets over it, I mean, she just proved to everybody she can win races, and she's going to win a lot more.
Danica Patrick is now congratulating each and every one of her crew members. I want to get Paul Hospenthal, her husband, in here for just a second as well. Paul, you've had to be on the sidelines, uncharacteristic for most male husbands, and, you know, kind of be the person that motivates your wife, but also tries to take some of the questions that are asked of her. How do you feel right now?
Oh, I'm so happy for her. It's you know, I'm just trying to hold it back myself, Jack. But she's been working hard. She's very patient today. Her team was fantastic. Kyle Moore had a great race. It's great for everybody.
You spend a lot of time in your profession dealing with other professional athletes. In fact, that was a relationship that developed into your eventual courting and marrying of your bride and Danica. How does this accomplishment by a female in motorsports rank with other accomplishments that you've seen in baseball and tennis and in golf?
I mean, I think it's great for anybody. You know, female aside, she's just a hard competitor. She's never asked to be the female in a male sport. She just wants to work hard. And I think with any race car driver, coming to the lead and winning like this and showing all the patience today, that's fantastic.
It's going to be a long... Oh, there we go.
Congratulations, son.
Guys, back to you.
That says it all. Congratulations. Thank you. Her 50th start, Danica Patrick, does what no woman has ever done in open wheel racing. She wins. She now moves up to third in the points. Elio leads by 12 over Scott Dixon, by 14 over that lady right there. And as I said, she gets congratulations from Kim Green, one of the team co-owners. Danica climbs into the car that will take her around the track to the cheers of everyone in Japan. And ticket sales, as we mentioned, are going to start jumping at Kansas and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I guarantee it.
Well, she listed her most memorable achievement was leading the Indianapolis 500. And this just might rank a little higher. I got to say that having a victory has got to be the thing that she's going to remember the most right now. The pressure may be off, but as an athlete and as a driver, she's going to turn around and use this as motivation to go and continue and run strong at Kansas, which she's run strong there before, Marty, so she's got a great opportunity to continue the momentum and do well there. And then on to Indianapolis, which is really the place that made Danica Patrick, and she was the first female to lead laps at the Indianapolis 500 race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I think without a doubt that she now is on her way to having a lot more confidence every time she sits inside the race car.
Michael Andretti is with Jack Arute.
Michael Andretti, you've had so many moments in motorsports. You've won here. You know what it takes to win at Motegi. Describe what Danica Patrick must be feeling right now.
I don't even know. I mean, I'm so happy for her. I'm just, I'm so proud of her. It's always been a question of when, not if, when she was going to win. And I'm so proud of her, the way she did it. She did a really good job sticking to the numbers and still keeping the speed. And I love this girl. She is just a first-class individual, and I'm so happy for her. I'm so happy now that monkey's off her back, you know, and you'll see. There's going to be more of this to come.
You can relate to the monkey on a driver's back. How difficult is it psychologically to hear it week in and week out, and in your case, and in Danica's case now, year in and year out?
Honestly, I'm not even sure it's about the hearing about it. I think it's more herself, you know. She wants to win so bad. She's such a competitor, and I think it's more the monkey off her back for herself and not everybody else. And that's the type of individual she is. And I think now that it's off, you're going to see a different person. And I think this is the first, like I said, of many more.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Michael Andretti won at Twin Ring Motegi in 2000. In 2008, it's that lady right there, Danica Patrick, making history for the second race in a row in the IndyCar Series. Is this the kind of year we're going to have? This is going to be pretty exciting. And we're going to make history again on tomorrow here at Long Beach, where you and I are getting ready for the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. Jack, hopefully he's going to make it. He's got a helicopter flight from here or from there to Narita Airport, then a flight across the ocean, and another helicopter flight from LAX to Long Beach.
You know, watching the interview with Michael Andretti, I have to remember that when he hired Danica Patrick, a lot of people said, why? There's so many great drivers out there. Why are you taking a chance on somebody that seems to have a lot of hype attached to her, but we don't know if she has the ability? And he said, because I think that she needs a team that surrounds her, that can support her. And there's no doubt having 3 teammates now versus 1 certainly is a situation I think that she's taken a great benefit from. And just the experience that it's at Team Andretti Green, I think has really paid dividends for her. And having the teachers that she did with Dario Franchitti last year, with Tony Kanaan this year, has given her confidence not only in driving to ask questions, but also in car setup. It's given her the confidence when maybe the cars weren't the best underneath her. And it's something on a team, Marty, that if you're out there driving and you have a question with the car and you wonder if it's you or the car, but your teammate's doing it and you got the same car, then you know you need to dig down inside and find out something else to do yourself. And I think she's done that. She's put all the pieces of the puzzle together. As her husband Paul said, she has been patient, but she knows now that she can do it. And the belief of Michael Andretti, when he hired her, said she will win someday, and she's going to win driving one of my cars.
Look at that. Need anything to be said? Just an incredible moment, and you're along for the ride with Danica Patrick. Can you imagine how many young girls are watching? And obviously back on the East Coast it's going to be late, but they'll see it on Sports Center, and they'll see replays of this race. I would imagine that this could become one of those ESPN instant classics, and they're going to dream of maybe one day following in her footsteps.
Well, you know something, my young son Michael is just starting to do some go-karting, and I've been away from the go-kart track for over 20 years, did it myself, but now returning to that, I can think there was maybe 1 or 2 girls that raced go-karts in all of the United States when I was doing it. Well, there must be 10 or 12 at each individual track you go to, from what I hear now, and the track that we race at, the same situation, because I think that girls are now accepted in the sport, and the heights of Sarah Fisher and Danica Patrick in the most recent, I think has helped that.
Well, females obviously have been extremely successful in drag racing. Of course, Shirley Muldowney led the way in minors, and obviously Ashley Force is getting a lot of attention now. Melanie Troxel as well. Look at this young girl. Could she be a Danica Patrick someday? And the fans in Japan, the corner workers there, the salute as they realize also history being made in Japan by Danica Patrick winning her first race. And I'm not sure if she still doesn't believe it.
Oh, it will set in on the train, on the plane ride home, and it'll be something that she'll wake up tomorrow morning and go, I can't believe it.
Well, she got a lot of press coverage all along throughout her career. Can you imagine what the crush is going to be like when she gets back in the States?
Can you imagine the crush at the Indianapolis 500?
Oh.
You're there for 3.5 weeks, and right now she's just taking it all, and that's a great shot.
I'm trying to hear what she's saying. There's her car at the victory podium. We should tell you, we should tell you, through all this, Helio Castroneves did finish second, 5 seconds back. Then it was Scott Dixon third, Dan Wheldon fourth, Tony Kanaan rounding out your top 5. Ed Carpenter was 6th, and Ryan Hunter-Reay was 7th. Guys, just ask her. I know our cameraman's there. Yeah, just tell her, ask her what she's thinking now that she's had a moment to digest it.
What are you thinking right now?
Honestly, just thinking, finally. And, yeah, you know, it wasn't even a matter of doing anything so much different. It was just a matter of luck and everything coming together and good strategy and, you know, I don't really know what I'm thinking. Just really, and I knew this is how I'd feel.
She knew this is how she'd feel. Well, now she's going to get to spray the champagne from the top level of the podium for the first time in her IndyCar career. And as Dad and everyone on the team said, it will not be the last. And as I think she's trying to fight her way through the crowd to make it up there.
You know, this is a young girl that we said that was racing go-karts and cut her teeth in go-karts and raced against Sam Hornish Jr. and had many battles. And I keep getting reminded when I go to the go-kart track these days of how she used to bump and push Sam Hornish around a little bit because they were both from Ohio and were racing together. And you know, Sam has gone on and had so much success in Indy cars and now is over in NASCAR. And it's just now her turn to have this opportunity to have the light shining on her because she has worked hard for it. She trains hard, and it's a lot of pressure on a driver, male or female, if you want to try and get to the top podium in motorsport, and that's exactly what she has done here today.
And there she goes. Let's just listen to the crowd. Crush of photographers. Again, our hosts, Japanese television. You know, the only thing I miss, because we were in Japan, obviously we don't have access to the radios. And it would have been nice to hear some of that conversation that we are so privileged when they're racing here in North America. She looks a little lonely up there right now. And there he is, Helio. He comes up to congratulate her. He's saying, you blew me by me like I was standing still.
I would love to know how much fuel was left in his gas tank.
And there is Scott Dixon, as we mentioned, in 3rd place. There's your top 3 tonight from Twin Ring Motegi. The top 3 in the points heading to next week. And remember, the teams have only 5 days to get ready for the first practice session this coming week at Kansas. There is the trophy being wheeled in.
I see the size of that trophy. I hope they don't expect her to lift that up over her shoulders.
Remember this date, April 20th, 2008. And as you think about it, go back to 1977 when a lady by the name of Janet Guthrie laid the groundwork for this moment. Lynn St. James would up the ante in 1992. Danica has been up to the challenge of raising that bar. Sarah Fisher even set herself a little higher in 2002. But on this date, it's Danica Patrick that not only competes, but wins. And that reference to Brooke is sister Brooke, who obviously is back here in the States. And I guarantee you that scream probably was heard all over town when Sis won.
A great moment for Honda, and after this race here, a lot of the drivers that are in Japan right now, when they come back to the States, will visit Torrance, California to the headquarters, and the trophy is just about as big as she is.
I think that's what they were telling her, and she put her arm up there saying, the trophy's as big as you are, and look at the trophies they get.
One you can bring back in your luggage, the other one you ship.
Yeah, right. Oh, my. That is, look at this. This is great. A great moment to share. And yeah, the guys need help carrying that heavyweight trophy. And now Danica has to carry hers out by herself, right? Presentation of the flowers.
And this goes on forever in the Japanese culture. I remember speaking to a lot of drivers that have won before, and they continue to get gifts. And I remember some of the guys saying that some of the stuff you have to have shipped back, and it arrives back in America just a couple of weeks later at your home, and many different things.
And none of the crowd seems to have left. I think they all realize the moment. And look at the smile. I don't think you'll see that smile go away for a while.
What a neat feeling. You know, you're saying about the effect it has on the young females that want to get into karting and into different types of motorsport. But, you know, one day she's going to be a mom. And, you know, if that's the case and they start to have kids, it's how neat is that to go back in your photo album and show your kids the first time that you won an IndyCar race.
And did you notice they're allowing the fans down onto the track now so they can get close to this moment of history as the photos and the flash bulbs continue to fly down in that area, and people are just pouring down to hopefully get up close to this moment in history in the IndyCar series.
And you mentioned history. The other thing that for Danica Patrick changes now also, she is probably one of the leading drivers in the IndyCar series right now as far as endorsements are concerned by commercial companies. And I think that's just going to continue and increase here after her win here in Motegi.
2 weeks ago, there was no champagne because Graham Rahal, being 19, he's not able to drink the champagne, but...
And that stings.
Yeah, oh yeah, she got a face full, and there she goes. The best taste of champagne she's ever had. And look at this. Oh, and that is so sticky. And when it dries, it smells so bad, but no one seems to care when you win. A celebration from Twin Ring Motegi, where this date, Danica Patrick has made history, winning her first IndyCar open wheel race on the 1.5-mile egg-shaped oval. Listen to the applause. I think Mom's on the phone with Brooke.
Talk clear because she probably isn't going to have much time. Brookie, I'm on TV talking to you right now.
She is. She's talking to Brooke. Brooke, it's Mom. I love the shot where she's got her arm up on the trophy.
You know, the neat thing for her, the next time she slides inside the cockpit at Kansas, she's a race winner.
Yeah.
The confidence, the way that she'll carry herself, the way that she has confidence to speak with the engineers, it just changes everything.
All right, we're going to step aside one final time before we put a period on this history-making event tonight from Twin Ring Motegi. Will we make a little more history tomorrow here at Long Beach? You better believe it. Stay with us. We'll talk about it when we come back. Can you believe this? Take a look at this. That's the sun. It finally came out in Japan. It is smiling down on the celebration for that young lady, 26-year-old Danica Patrick, who has made history, winning her first IndyCar open wheel event at Twin Ring Motegi. Mom and Dad basking in the sunshine, celebrating the moment.
Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Let's listen in.
I knew there was always a reason why I like coming to Japan. Thank you to everybody, you know. I shouldn't miss this opportunity to thank Andretti Green, thank Mike, Kevin, and Kim for believing in me, thanking my teammates for always helping me, my family for always being with me, and my team for doing a great job, and all you fans, thanks for coming out again today.
And now they'll get the Japanese translation And we've put together a few of the milestones, certainly not all of them, but women in sports, and you can tell the breeze is still blowing, that the cameraman's not celebrating on the platform. He's trying to hold that shot still, but take a look at some of the milestones that have occurred through the history of sports. And
Kanpai. Thank you so much. Danica Patrick 選手でした。どうぞお拍手を。
And here it is. Gertrude Ederle, a first to swim the English Channel. That was back in 1926. And how about Maureen Conley to win the tennis Grand Slam? Billie Jean King, I remember that night when she beat Bobby Riggs, the Battle of the Sexes. We already mentioned Janet Guthrie. Julie Crone, boy, she could ride a horse. The first jockey to win a Triple Crown race from the female side. And, of course, Pat Summitt, the winningest coach in NCAA from Tennessee. And now Danica Patrick, the first to win a major open wheel race. The crowd still filing down onto the track, celebrating the moment as the podium is finally vacated, and it takes two guys to lift that trophy off of the stage. And let's take a look at the updated points. We talked about the top three being, of course, the number 3 of Elio Castroneves. He holds a 12-point margin over Scott Dixon, 14 now over Danica Patrick. And then Tony Kanaan is 4th, 23 markers behind. And then it drops on down, as you can see, with Dan Wheldon, Tony Kanaan, Ed Carpenter, Ryan Hunter-Ray. Now, what you also have to remember is we have a race to run tomorrow here at Long Beach. And there are 9 drivers, of course, that are running the Champ Car race in the Champ Car finale that will also score equal points. Justin Wilson is on the pole for that race. Graham Rahal will be in that race. And as you take a look at the points championship, there you see the numbers. And there will be guys that will score points that will move up. There's Graham Rahal in 12th right now, but that's pending the outcome of tomorrow's race.
And remember, for a win, you get 50 points, 40 for second, 35 for third, and on down the line. So that will change dramatically by the time we finish this race here at Long Beach tomorrow.
So we'll find out what happens there, as that will be another history-making moment, that it will close a chapter of open wheel racing. The bitter rivalry of 12 years will finally be put to bed from Long Beach, right here with the 34th running of the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. She's talking to her sister Brooke right now, back here in the States.
Don't cry. I already did that.
Don't cry. I've already done it.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you were here.
So at age 26, in her 50th start, Danica Patrick becomes the 38th driver and first woman to win in the IndyCar Series.
Thank you. Brooke. It's Brooke. Don't be sad.
It's time for us to put a close on this evening. We've got to get ready for another race tomorrow right here from Long Beach. It's Sunday, 5:30 Eastern on ESPN2. It'll be the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, the Champ Car season finale. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. And coming up next, it'll be the 06 World Series of Poker Circuit Championship. Congratulations to that lady right there, Danica Patrick, as we salute this lady who makes history tonight at Twin Ring, Motegi. Just part of the action of the history-making event, the pass on the high side, and the twin checkered flags, and the celebration that begins with Mom celebrating a hug with her daughter, and a lot of tears with Dad as well, and husband Paul. For our entire ESPN crew, I'm Marty Reed. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Till we meet again.